Welcome to another episode of the Cornerstone Gundog Academy podcast. I hope you're doing good, and I'm so excited to be talking with you today. This is going to be a good episode. I'm super excited about it. I'm coming to you from Retriever Training Supply. Before we get going, I would love to shout out a couple of things. Number one, the Cornerstone Gundog Academy chapters. So since we have updated the Cornerstone Gundog Academy app recently, it's been incredible. It's been just blowing up, but specifically chapters. We also released Cornerstone Gundog Academy chapters, and it's been amazing at how fast it's taking off. Chapters are spanning from East to West Coast, and there's 26, 27 chapters currently. And so again, chapters are where members connect on a local level, both digitally and in person, and it is incredible. We'll talk a little more about that as we go on throughout these episodes, but I wanted to shout that out. And all the members, I specifically want to give a shout out to all the members that are volunteering to help pull off the chapters, because it's all member driven. And so without the members, we couldn't be doing that. And it is incredible. So today's topic that we're going to be covering on the Cornerstone Gundog Academy podcast is steadiness. I really couldn't think of a better topic to be covering, especially as we are, check the date here, we're August 8th. So we are literally approaching early season. September will be here before you know it. And if you're like many, steadiness on that first hunt can not be ideal, especially if you haven't been preparing for it. But I want to kind of do a deeper dive on steadiness, and we'll do that here in a minute. But before I do, or as I'm continuing on, if you are watching this on YouTube, put in the comments. Let me know either one of your coolest steadiness stories, or one of the steadiness stories that made you realize steadiness is important for a dog. So also want to shout out CGA member Cody Lloyd for the question here on steadiness. Again, we've talked about this on the first part of the podcast, but I just want to reiterate that this podcast is designed to give back and help as many people as possible have a better experience with their retriever. And a part of that is through questions. So whether you're asking a question, if you're listening on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this from, or specifically the members, right? We're going to be answering a lot of member questions on this podcast. And so I want to shout out CJ member Cody Lloyd, who actually happens to be a chapter volunteer as well. He's pulling off a chapter there in PA, so it's incredible. But I want to read his question off to you, and then we'll go from there and dive in. So when I kind of asked, hey, let me know any questions you have, and Cody jumped in and said, hey, I just subscribed to the Cornerstone Gundog Academy podcast. I've got the notifications set. I'm also sending it to my hunting buddies, and I really appreciate that, right? Sending this podcast out is going to help. That's one thing you can do, and if you're enjoying this podcast, is send this out to people you know. Share it with anybody you know that could find some value in this, especially steadiness. But his question was this: can we go over the necessity of a steady dog? Why is it better to have a steady dog? Can we cover topics like, maybe it's safety, pleasure of watching the dog be steady, marking, general enjoyment of the hunt? And then he went on to say, the one guy that I hunt with in the pit that I go to in my club, he's got a dog that's not steady. And so a lot of the time, as the shots are going off, his dog Bo is sitting beside him while his buddy's dog is out there running around. And so typically that's interfering with his hunt. He's only getting to shoot once because the other dog is out there running around. He's just not going to shoot over a dog, which I respect that, right? We don't want to hurt any dog. Anything over 20 yards, we end up having to send Bo after, which is Cody's dog, because the other dog just doesn't have any idea, right? It's running out there, just doesn't know what's going on, which is not mad about it, right? Because, at the end of the day, that's a good extra work for his dog. So all that said, let's kind of dive into steadiness. I mean, really, thank you again, Cody, for your question. And that right there alone shows why steadiness is important. But I want to go on a deeper level of steadiness beyond just the hunt and beyond retrieving. So that leads me to the question, and maybe the question you have, what is steadiness? And, steadiness is really it's a deeper level than just having a dog sit there and wait. It's really a truly steady dog is one that trusts you, the owner. And here's the big thing. Your dog is trusting you, is trusting you over its own instincts and desires, right? The dog has the desires to go, but it's choosing to trust what you're saying instead. That is true steadiness, and that can be in a plethora of environments, as we're going to get into. By the way, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to give you a practical game plan for implementing steadiness for both a dog that is struggling with steadiness and a puppy. So be sure to check that out as we go through this episode. But let's kind of break down some steadiness, and we'll kind of get into some details and some myths here in a minute as well. But the key word here is trust. I really want to talk about that. And that's trust. Steadiness is built on the foundation of trust. Does your dog trust you? Does your dog trust you enough that it says, even though I see a dog flipping around, a bird flipping out there in the decoys, I'm going to wait until told to go? Or does the dog trust itself more? And that's kind of that right there. It's really a perspective shift, and it's going to give you the key to understanding steadiness if you can build that. So let me share a story with you real quick. I'm going to share kind of a couple of stories, but one will be my personal story, and then I want to refer back to another video that was released on the Cornerstone Gundog Academy YouTube. But so back in the day, there was something called the British Field Trial Society of America. It may still be around, may not. I don't think it is. But long story short, when we were first getting into the dog stuff, that was one of the things we were participating in. It was incredible. Absolutely loved it. One of the fun things about that is that we were retrieving with, competing with dogs, but we're competing with multiple other dogs. So like what you do is you got to have like 10 dogs minimum on the line, so to speak, and that's 10 dogs out at once. So it's not like one dog out doing its thing and then one honor dog. Like you're honoring 10 other dogs. So it's incredible. Now, as you can imagine, sometimes a dog gets outed pretty quick because when you got 10 dogs out there, steadiness can be a challenge. And so my dog, Earl, at the time, we were crushing it. We were having a fantastic time on this field trial. And basically what happened is we were running to the final series. Everything was going fantastic. But there was a dog that was in heat and the wind had shifted. It actually wasn't in heat. It had just come out of heat, but Earl was very in tune with that. And so he was paying close attention. Also, I had not had Earl that long. I didn't start Earl when he was a puppy. He was actually an imported dog, and I actually got him from my partner here at Cornerstone, Barton Ramsey. And so Earl was familiar with Barton's voice as well. And me and Barton were competing at the time. I was winning at this point. But there was one thing. I made a mistake. And we'll kind of dive into this, and this is just talking about steadiness. But as we're on the line, and that smell is kind of coming down towards Earl, he's already kind of looking around, and I'm starting to feel uneasy. So as an inexperienced handler at the time, young handler, I was getting a little nervous. And then Barton had to step out, and it was his turn to run. So he stepped out, and he was giving a command or whatever it was to his dog, and then Earl just kind of peeked out and was looking out like that. So what I did. And it wasn't far. He just took one step and then just peeked his head. Honestly, if I hadn't done anything, nothing would have happened. What I did is I took my leg and I just kind of pushed him back just gently. He didn't break, but he just took a step and looked. And then I was tapped on the shoulder and told, hey, put your dog on the lead, you're out. And that's what I loved about that whole game, is the steadiness was such a crucial aspect of it. Like, it's like if your dog can't be steady, you're not going to win. You're not going to have what you need. And so that was a wild story. I was disappointed I didn't win, but it was a good lesson. Number one, it was a lesson to look, if it's not serious, like at that point, I could have just if he would have stepped out, more than likely he would have came on back and healed like beside me. And he didn't even really leave my side. He just took one step. But nonetheless, I panicked and then I tried to compensate for it, and that got me out. But the moral of that story, right, is again, steadiness is crucial. And there's different levels of steadiness, and we'll get into some myths here in a second. But I also want to point you back to an episode we actually, at the time of filming this and the time of releasing this, we had just released, it's on the Cornerstone Gundog Academy YouTube. It's called Duck Dog or Redemption. And what I really want to highlight is CGA member Colin Berry's dog, him and Milo, but Milo's steadiness. That was some of the most challenging of scenarios for a dog to be steady in this environment, was because of how many birds were coming in, how many hunters were out there with us, yet Milo stayed steady, and then Colin was able to stay calm because he had done the training and he had done what he needed to do with his dog. And so those are two examples of strong steadiness, right? And in Colin's case, he was comfortable and he wasn't panicking. His dog stayed steady. And in my case, well, I made a mistake, but it was still had made it that far. And this is all off lead work, by the way. These dogs are not on the lead when we were running this. These dogs were totally off lead. So you imagine 10 dogs, no lead. No, nothing. It's just you and your dog and that connection. So that's what I want to bring that back to you, is that connection. I want to tie it back to the story with Earl there. I had not had him long, so our connection was not as strong as it needed to be. That's why I was feeling a little bit nervous, and just because I didn't fully understand the setup yet. And so when you have that connection with your dog and you've built that bond and you've built that trust, you're going to be able to read your dog better and make some good calls and some good handler calls, which is important. Steadiness is not just on the dog, it's on the handler. It's about the decisions you make, the words, the commands you use. Let's hit up a couple of common steadiness myths now that we told those stories, and then we'll dive into some practical stuff and how to help your dog be more steady. One of the first myths, and this is a big one, is steadiness too early can kill your dog's retrieving drive. And we're going to kind of dive into this in a second, but I would 100% say that is a myth. Steadiness should start the minute you bring your puppy home. Now, you might be sitting there saying, you're crazy, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be doing fun bumpers. Well, keep listening and we'll talk about that here in a second. Another myth is once your dog starts breaking, you're not going to be able to fix it. You might as well just tie them up, use a tie-out stake. It's over. They're done. They're being broke. They're going to keep breaking. Well, that isn't necessarily the case either. You can fix that. One other myth is a little creeping never hurt anyone, right? I hear a lot of hunters say that. Well, it's okay if they inch forward just a little bit. And in my case with Earl, that inching forward cost me. Frankly, number one, if he hadn't inched forward, it wouldn't have been an issue. Number two, my handler mistake cost us as well. And so those are just three myths right off the bat I wanted to just kind of hit. And if those are some myths maybe you've been buying into, specifically the too early one, and then specifically the dog breaking, once they start breaking, it's over. And those are the two I kind of really want to highlight. But of course, the third one's important as well. So steadiness. Let's dive a little deeper. Steadiness is just more than retrieving. And that's what I meant on the first myth I was just talking about. We're going to dive into that. It's how your dog responds in any given environment. It doesn't have to be just related to retrieving. Steadiness is the way I like to say, it's a lifestyle. It's not something that you necessarily just do. And this is a perspective shift that I would love for us to all take. If you really want to have a steady retriever, you're going from I'm just training steadiness to like, this is the lifestyle of how my dog is going to be. So wherever you're at with your dog, if you want to have a steady dog, or if you desire that, and maybe if we can bust through that myth that once this happens, once your dog isn't steady, we can bust through that. Like if your dog is breaking, you can fix steadiness. It can be done, even if it's been going on for some time. Now, right, you're gonna have your work cut out for you, but you can break through that. But when is the best time to start steadiness? That's a big question that we get. And the best time is now. For you, where you're at right now, the best time to start it is right now. And so also we need to kind of break down that myth of starting too early, right? So a lot of people say that starting steadiness too early is gonna kill your dog's retrieving drive. Well, when you start viewing steadiness as a lifestyle, that's really thinking of it in more of the perspective in retrieving. And while steadiness early on with retrieving isn't probably the best idea, I wouldn't think that will kill your dog's retrieving drive. Now, personally, I think you should be doing some fun bumpers early on. But steadiness is more than just being steady on retrieves. It's being steady in all kinds of environments. So like, for example, if you've got a young dog or a puppy, it's being steady when you pull that food bowl out, hold it over the dog's head, have it sit down, and then make the dog wait a second and then give the food. And then eventually working up until you can sit the food down, your dog will stare at the food, and your dog will look at you and it'll wait until you say, go eat it, and then go from there. That in and of itself is steadiness as well. Another example of steadiness is your dog sitting on place while you're doing a barbecue or hanging out with your family. That's your dog is staying on place, right? There may be kids running around, there may be fun things to do, but maybe your dog's gonna stay on place and then wait because you've told it to. And any part of your life, you can incorporate steadiness. Now, I'm not saying you should 100% always be steady, but what I'm saying is that it should be on your terms. And that's really what steadiness is. Steadiness isn't how long your dog can stay on place. Steadiness is your dog's willingness to trust you and choose your commands and your desires over its own. So that looks like if you're doing a barbecue and your dog's sitting on place, but you say, you know what, go play. That's a steady dog. The dog running around doing its thing because you gave it the command. You gave it the freedom to do it. Your dog is trusting you. So don't feel like you got to be this guy or girl that makes your dog sit on place 24/7 and doesn't let it do anything else. It can be on your terms. The big thing about steadiness is it always needs to be on your terms, because again, steadiness is just if your dog breaks or does something, that's really just a violation of what you desire, and it's the dog choosing its desires over itself. That's why trust is so important, and that's why the way we train at Cornerstone is so valuable, because you're building that bond, you're building that trust, especially if you're training your dog yourself. You're building that bond for yourself day by day and week by week as you train your dog. So steadiness starting too early will not kill your dog's retrieving drive. What I would recommend, again, is on the starting that early, I would still recommend doing some fun retrieves. I would still recommend like letting your dog have some fun retrieves. In fact, we recommend that in the course, like do some fun bumpers, but don't overdo it. You want to kind of limit that. You want to have limitation on those retrieves. You want to give them just enough that they love it, that they're hungry for it, but also not enough. You don't want to give them too much to where they learn to quit. And let me just throw that key out there is if you give them so many and they quit on their terms, that's where it's going off. So what we typically recommend is like 3 to 5 retrieves in that situation. So let's dive in to how to actually teach steadiness. We've kind of talked about that as a puppy, but we kind of want to get into some of the nitty-gritty details. And this is where we can kind of break through that myth on, if your dog's breaking, it's over, they're too far gone. But typically when it comes to working on steadiness at a later stage, but even as a puppy, there's 2 things you need to keep in mind, and it's positive reinforcement and negative punishment. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to give you a brief breakdown on that here. We cover that in depth in the course. But in a nutshell, positive punishment is adding or giving a reward to reinforce a behavior. So if your dog does something good, they're receiving a reward. Negative punishment is taking away something that they desire, that they want, that they love, and that's a form of punishment. So an easy example of this is if you've got a helper out there throwing bumpers for you, you're sitting here, your dog's beside you, and then they throw the bumper up, and then your dog starts to break, your helper picks the bumper up before the dog gets to it. That's a punishment. The dog was excited, they thought they were getting a reward, but you're taking it away. You're taking the desired thing away from them. And so in steadiness training, that's actually gonna be really the sweet spot is positive reinforcement, negative punishment. And another terms on that is let's reinforce, let's reward them. Like for example, on the retrieve, all right, the dog's sitting there, and then you tell it to go. In a sense, that's a positive reinforcement. You've given it the release command. Now it is getting a reinforcement of picking up that retrieve. And just like we said, the other example, that negative punishment is going to help you well. The big thing about negative punishment, again, is it's just taking away something that they love. And that is going to really help you influence the dog's behavior. Punishment when you want to decrease the behavior, reinforcement or reward when you want to increase the likelihood of that same behavior. So let's take, for example, a dog that's been on some hunts, it's broke a few times, that's gotten the reward of the retrieve, and now it's starting to get into the habit of breaking. Well, what can you do? Well, you don't want to just quit and say, well, I'm just gonna give up and I'm gonna have a dog that runs around and doesn't know what it's doing. You gotta jump on it quick. Ideally, you want to correct it immediately the first time it happens. You want to interrupt that retrieve. Now, if your dog already gets away from you, and the dog already picks up the duck, you don't want to punish that or correct that at all. It's too late. You just need to be better preemptively. So I've got a couple tools with me here that I want to pull out. Number one is this Steady tab. I'm going to see if we can get it up here on the screen. The Steady tab we offer here at Retriever Training Supply. This is a fantastic tool. Dogs really learn through repetition. So whether they're getting good reps or bad reps, they learn through repetition. And so if you repeat success, and this could help you repeat success because you're holding on to your dog, you're not letting it go, and you're getting rewards because you're choosing when to let the dog go. That's going to go a long way. Another here is the slip collar here. I'm going to see if we pull this up here on the screen. If you're listening to this as you're driving down the road or whatever on the podcast, just know there's a YouTube video on this you can go and watch. But the slip collars we have here go hand in hand with the Steady tab and with our actual leads as well. And these are a great combo. You can have this on there, keeps it nice and tight, and it's going to help you prevent your dog from breaking. That's a preemptive measure. I think that's a good tool. Now that sound or the click, the cool thing is this is a quick release tab. When you release that, you could typically be pretty quiet with it. It's not perfect, and if you're not careful, your dog will get in the habit. They'll know when you're releasing it, but that's why we really designed the Steady tab to where you actually don't have to release the click. You just hold it, and then the key is you want to keep the tightness right as you go. You don't want to keep it too tight or loosen it. Like a lot of people run into the habit of, okay, right before they send the dog, they just drop it. And that's indicating to the dog that they're going to get to go. So the big thing on that is just be consistent whatever you do. But this is a great tool to start helping you get successful reps. And that is, again, that is key along the way. The big thing on that is positive reinforcement, negative punishment, right? If your dog is steady, then give it the command, let it go. That's on your terms. What you'll find is that you can start giving your dog more and more rope, so to speak, right? Let's say you're holding onto the rope, your dog's holding on to the rope, you're gonna start releasing more of the rope to their side. And if your dog is breaking more, you're gonna start tightening things down and then keep it tighter. When I say the rope, I don't literally mean the lead. I mean metaphorically, so to speak. If there's this invisible rope, you're giving your dog more slack. You're giving them more freedom. Freedom would be the right word. The more freedom you give your dog, great. But if you start giving your dog too much freedom and they start breaking, then you gotta reel that freedom back in. And we'll talk about that as a rule of thumb on how to follow that, a good guideline here in a second. But the big thing is every day, if you're viewing steadiness as a lifestyle, let's start small and let's get easy wins early in the day, whether that's when you're letting your dog out of the crate, if your dog stays in a crate overnight. My dogs personally do, feel like it keeps them safer. But whatever it is, let's start with steadiness, or that's maybe walking out the door to let them out the bathroom in the morning. Make the dog sit there. Don't let them just go busting out. Make your dog sit there and wait and look at you and wait for your command. As you start incorporating that into every aspect of your lifestyle and the dog's lifestyle, you're gonna start seeing steadiness happen more and more. And so that rule of thumb that I was talking about a second ago, I call it the 90-10 rule, or at least that's what we do here at Cornerstone. We talk a lot about the successful reps, or what's gonna lead you to a successful retriever. If you practice successful reps, too many people want to test their dogs. And I'm not gonna go deep in that, but basically 90% of your training should be an environment that your dog can accomplish and do it with confidence. If you train that way, your dog is going to get the most successful reps. And that 10% is when you're gonna push the limits, you're gonna push the margin. That's where you're gonna give them that freedom and see, hey, are you gonna listen or you're not? Don't do a 50-50 rule, follow the 90-10 rule. 90% success, 10% margin of error, or giving them that freedom to give them the opportunity to really sink or swim. You wanna give them that opportunity. If you need to swoop in, you can and help them, but give them a little bit of freedom. That's gonna go a long way. So let's break down this steadiness as a whole, and then I'll get into giving you the game plan that you've been waiting for. I've just created a simple game plan, just simple, easy, that you can start doing. I think if you'll implement that, follow kind of what we talked about before, you're shifting your perspective from steadiness is something we do to it's an entire lifestyle. And then if you'll implement this game plan I'm about to tell you over the next series of weeks, what you'll probably find is that you're gonna have a better dog. But that 90-10 rule, that's kind of a key, that's kind of crucial there. The one thing I wanna draw your attention to is I kind of just remind you of what we just talked about and kind of go back through. The big thing is this is a lifestyle, right? And steadiness can happen in a ton of different environments. It doesn't have to be just retrieving. It can be going on a walk. There's so many instances where your dog can be steady, but basically it incorporates steadiness into every part of your life. And yes, it's okay to do some fun retrieves here and there, but big thing is we want to instill steadiness. Now, if you've got a dog that's a little bit older, I would definitely encourage you to be focused more on steadiness on retrieves. At a certain point, when you hit a certain level, you got to raise the bar, right? The standard's always the standards, but your expectations are going to vary depending on what level and stage your dog is at. Also, just keep in mind steadiness. If you're going to be taking a hunting dog out, just kind of like Cody kind of mentioned earlier in his question and kind of telling his experience of hunting around a dog that wasn't steady. A dog that's not steady is not a safe dog, and it really can create challenges on the hunt, and it's going to limit you. I would say the biggest thing, it's going to limit you as the dog's owner and handler. You don't want to have to be apologizing for your dog's behavior. So if you can start this now, especially as we release this episode before early season, you can start incorporating steadiness. You can start seeing more steadiness in your retriever. And if you just keep this in the mind, again, if your dog has been having those challenges on steadiness before, it's not over. If you start implementing what we've just talked about here, you can start having and developing a more steady dog. Just keep this in mind. You can't necessarily turn the entire ship in a split second. Sometimes it takes time. So if the ship's been going that direction for a while, sometimes softer, easier turns are better than just trying to force and muscle it. And we don't really want to do that. We want to let this be an encouraging experience for us and our dogs. And remember what we talked about earlier was it's all built on trust. Everything's built on trust. So that's one of the key foundations. So that said, let's dive into the game plan. Let me give you a game plan real quick as I wrap up this episode. And I'm going to give you two game plans. One, if you've got a dog that is already trained, struggling with steadiness. And the second game plan, I'm going to give you kind of a routine to do with a young dog or a puppy. So first up is the game plan for a dog that is struggling, but it's already trained a little bit. It's older. We're not talking about a puppy. And the big thing is, again, I want to reiterate, this is built on successful reps. So both of these game plans I'm going to share with you are built on successful reps. So your goal is not to test your dog and see how steady they can be. Your goal is to help them be steady. Let every rep you do, let it incorporate steadiness and let it get them a win. We want to get our dogs a win. The first thing I would do when I'm going to go out, you can do this in your yard. You literally don't have to go anywhere to do this. If you've got got a yard decent enough to do a few retrieves, 20, 30 yards, 40 yards, whatever, that's going to be more than enough to incorporate this. Even if you got a reasonably small yard, you can do this. But first things first, when we start out our training, let's say you're getting off work, let's start with obedience. And that can be just heel work. That can be a little bit of letting them go play, let them burn some energy, but also focusing on recall. What you're really focused on in that obedience is getting your dog to lock in with you and then be connected. And then the next thing I personally would recommend doing is the steady tab marks, where we got the tool here we were talking about. Again, if you're watching this on the video, you can see this. If you're listening, you can go to retrievertrainingsupply.com. You can check that out. The steady tab with a slip collar. These are steady tab marks. The reason I'm saying start with this, especially if you've had a dog that's struggling with marking, remember we just talked about successful reps being key. Well, if you start out off lead and your dog breaks the first retrieve, well, what are you doing? You're reinforcing that breaking, right? Because they positively are reinforced because they pick up the bumper. So pull out the steady tab, bring that out there, and then have them steady. Now, if your dog starts pulling and stuff on the lead, well, don't reward that. Go out there and pick it up yourself, turn that into a denial retrieve. And so that's kind of a little caveat here. Just keep that in the back of your mind. But I'm going to recommend 3 retrieves, 3 steady tab retrieves. Then we're gonna branch out and we're gonna make this a little bit more challenging. Actually, let me add to that real quick. On those steady tab retrieves, we wanna also do delayed retrieves here and there, and I would vary that. So for the first retrieve, let it be a 2-3 second delay. Maybe the second retrieve, let it be a 10, 15, 20 second retrieve. Don't feel like you ever have to send your dog right away. And if you haven't watched that episode with Colin Berry yet called Duck Dog Redemption on the YouTube channel, go check that out. There were times actually, and we actually talked about it in a recent podcast on the Build From Here podcast, that there were times where volleys of birds would come in, we would shoot, the birds would land, fall out there from being shot, but then another volley was coming, so we couldn't send the dog. So he had to sit there and wait, watching other birds come in. That's steadiness. And so that's why delayed retrieves are great. Don't ever feel like you've got to send your dog right away, especially on a mark. Now, once you've done those 3 delayed retrieves, you've done the obedience, you've done the 3 delayed retrieves, we're going to pull out remote marks. Now, I love remote marks because it gives me the ability to either make it more challenging or easier, per se, on the dog, depending on what we're going to do. So we're basically going to remove the steady tab at this point, and then we're going to walk in front of our dog. That's why I like remote marks, especially if you've got a dog that's struggling with steadiness. Walk in front of your dog, hold your hand out, let them look at you, and then throw the bumper out kind of behind you if you're looking at the dog. So what does that mean? If the dog decides to break, you can cut the dog off and prevent it from breaking. And then you can say, no, get them to stop. And then you can prevent them from getting the reinforcement or the retrieve. You're stopping them from getting that retrieve. If the dog is steady, it can be on your command. And then as you get progressively better at this, you can eventually get to where you throw the mark, you walk back and have your dog have a delayed mark and then send them from your side. But I'm going to recommend 3 remote mark retrieves as well. And then finally, ending, what I would recommend is 2 things here. Number 1, 3 denial retrieves. We're going to end on a denial, 2 to 3, give or take, depending on what you want for the game plan. And then after you do that, we're going to wrap up with some more obedience. And a key for the obedience is don't go through the motions. Focus on actually having that connection and bond with your dog. If you follow this game plan, you're going to be well on your way to success for a dog that is struggling with steadiness. I would recommend run this game plan for probably 2 to 3 weeks, status quo, don't change anything. Then that's when we've done the 90-10 rule. We've done this 3 weeks. Basically all the training for 3 weeks has been easy. We are setting them up for success. After that, throw in the 10% margin, give them a little freedom and make it more challenging and then see how they do. If they fail, step back, get more wins until you can try again following that 90-10 rule. And so that is really kind of what we want to focus on. That's a good game plan. Again, following that 90-10 rule. If your dog gets some failure reps in there, then step back, get them a win if they are successful. And then when you've given them that freedom, you're free to move on and continue that progressive, making it more challenging and improving their steadiness, which is going to help you have a better steady dog. And hopefully if you start this right now as this episode is released, depending on when you're listening to it, you can be better prepared for season. So up next is the young puppy game plan, right? Because again, we talked about there's these myths out there saying, well, you can't do steadiness with a young puppy. You should just get them fired up, get them going crazy. Well, that's not exactly true. Again, you want to incorporate steadiness early on. So let's dive into that game plan. So what I would recommend is incorporating steadiness into basically your puppy's life, whether it's at dinner time, like we've already talked about, holding that food above their head and then making them sit and then sitting it down and then making them wait and then giving them the command to do it. The doors, thresholds, things like that, when you're about to walk through a door, or if people are coming over, these are really great. People coming over, that's a little advanced. You can work on that. But specifically at doors, this is a low stimulant environment where it's just you and the dog walking. You're about to open the door. Have your dog sit, you open the door, you walk out first, then you bring your dog through. Or you have your dog sit and you have your dog walk through with you. You have your dog sit as you go through the threshold, and then you shut the door behind you. What you're practicing is your dog being in tune with you, right? Your young puppy being in tune. And again, you can reward this with treats, right? We want to positively reinforce that steadiness. Also, we can incorporate that in obedience, right? When you're doing your training, like if you're doing Cornerstone, you're following Cornerstone, especially the place training, the hill work, any of the obedience training, incorporate steadiness into that, especially after you work on extended sit and extended place, and you're building that out. Just take opportunities to work on that periodically, even when you're not actually following the routine. Like this is what I would recommend doing just throughout the day. Does it make sense? Hey, you're hanging out with your dog, maybe you're grilling out, make your dog sit there for a couple of minutes. Don't feel like you've got to make them sit there for too long. Remember what we talked about earlier. Steadiness is not necessarily this massive long steadiness. It's really just your dog's ability to trust you and choose your commands and wishes over its own decisions. And so if that's 2 minutes, you've got to understand what level your puppy is at. Don't expect them to do 20, 30 minutes. If they're at a 1 minute level, they're at a 2 minute level. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And then what I would also recommend is fun retrieving. Let's keep doing the fun retrieves. Don't feel like you got to steady them up too much. I'm not saying don't steady your dog on your young puppy on retrieves. In fact, I would incorporate it in there. Hold them back a little bit, have them sit there, and they're excited, they're leaning forward, then let it go. But I would still keep a mix where you're teasing them with it, fun bumpers, letting them go get it. But limit the retrieves. The rule of thumb there is not too many. You want to leave your dog hungry for more, right? You want to be stopping, sooner rather than later. So probably 3, 4 retrieves. Don't really go over that. Really, seriously, don't. You can do that a couple of times a week, but don't overdo that, because if you do, you're going to instill too much drive. But also, don't feel like you can't do any retrieves, right? We want to make sure that we're doing that, because a big part of a dog is the go. But here's the deal. If your dog has the go, it's not going to be that big a deal. You're just going to awaken it a little bit with those fun retrieves. But that's really what I would do, the game plan with your puppy. So dinner time specifically, thresholds, doors, a little bit of extended place. And then as you do that for a few weeks and as it gets better, especially if you're following Cornerstone, that's naturally going to be instituted in the course and the process as you go through on the step-by-step course. But if you're not following Cornerstone, do this for 2 or 3 weeks. As your dog starts to get better, add some variables in there, add a few distractions in there, whether it's a cat or a neighbor walking by, whatever it is. Just practice steadiness, but remember the 90-10 rule. 90% success, 10% margin for error. Give them that little bit of freedom, and you're going to be well on your way. Now, the final tip I want to leave you with is train with other people as often as possible. I want to tell you one final story to kind of close out and end this podcast. But kind of talking about building off CGA chapters, we already talked about that. In the Birmingham chapter, we had a meetup back in July, and it was incredible. But what was awesome is we had a gentleman come out with a young dog. I think the puppy was 4 to 6 months old, somewhere in there. And then we had a lot of older dogs, 2, 3 years old. And that 4 to 6 month old puppy was able to jump right in and start training with us. And so we had, I think, 8 of us or so out there. And that dog was learning and training in that environment. It was learning steadiness. So he got amazing work with his dog. But the key there was training with others, right? So train with others as much as possible. That's going to go a long way. I know for a lot of y'all out there, that's a challenge, but that's what we're doing here at Cornerstone. We're helping overcome that challenge through the Cornerstone chapters and through the community at Cornerstone. When you get connected with Cornerstone, you're getting to be part of a lot of people that are training their dogs. So hopefully you've got the opportunity to train with other people. But training with other people, and the more often you can do that, the better. It gets your dog more comfortable in that environment. Versus if you just do it once or twice a year, that's a high excitement in situation. But when it becomes common to your dog, it's no big deal. And so that's what I thought was so cool about our local Birmingham chapter event, that his young dog was able to get in that environment at 4 to 6 months old or somewhere in there. That's such a great age to start because they don't know anything different. So the earlier you can start them in that environment, the better, assuming that it's a safe, conducive environment. And that's what fortunately chapters are. I'm confident of that, right? We're encouraging that. Let's make sure we make it safe for everybody's dogs, depending on that. And that's a big part of doing your chapter thing, making sure that, hey, we're going to consider every dog, every handler in this. And so, but the big thing is train with others as much as you can. And if you don't have that ability, then at least take your dog on lead, go to a park or something, maybe not a dog park, but just a local park where they're getting exposure. Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever it may be. Get your dog some exposure, and that's going to go a long way for you. So that is the Steadiness episode, or at least one. We'll probably do more than one episode on Steadiness. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I do want to say one thing. If you feel like you've gotten some value out of this and you would love to, the one biggest thing you could do to help this grow and help us continue to do this to help other people would be to share this podcast. But also the one biggest thing you could do to help your buddies that may be struggling with this is share this podcast with them. Maybe they'll listen to this and they'll find some areas, and maybe they'll even try the game plan we just mentioned and help improve the dog's steadiness. And one other thing I want to say is, if you're struggling with steadiness, let's not be down on ourselves about that. Like, if maybe you haven't even ever thought about it and you're thinking, man, I really do need a steady dog. Like, don't be hard on yourself. Like, just start today. That's kind of like we said earlier. When's the best time to start steadiness? Now. Don't wait too long. Start steadiness now, and that's going to go great for you. The final thing I would ask, again, if you loved this episode, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. Let me know if you've got some questions. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, please leave us a review. And again, share it with everybody you know. It would mean so much. And I look forward to the next episode. And I can't wait to help you on your retriever training journey. We'll see you next time.